Good morning. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter, your Consciousness Transformation Ascension Guide, originator of Trinity Energy Progression, bringing you this week's Living the Shift. So, welcome to the year end version as we are here on New Year's Eve day. And it's funny is I've seen like all week so much going on about like, oh, can't wait for the end. How many more days? There's a lot of memes that are really funny. Um, but oh, I got to turn on this thing. Here we go. And because everyone's like, oh my God, I'm so done with this year, yada yada yada. Good morning, Laurel. And so the thing that's really important is remember we create this shift period or the shift day or the shift moment collectively by saying, okay, well, we're going to make a big change by moving into a different year. Good morning, Kathy. And so it's great because the momentum of change then, or the momentum of the intention, is collective. And so it gives us an opportunity to really be supported and support ourselves in some kind of change or shift that we would like to see within ourselves. So part of what we are, so what's interesting is we are so like, there's so many people that are like, oh, I'm so done with 2020, blah, 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 it's been horrible. 2020 has been an amazing year. And when we stop looking at it with judgment based on what the media has told us, what everybody else has told us, like our immersion into negativity has told us. And I say that without judgment. I'm just stating it. It's a matter of just coming to this place of recognizing we've had huge amounts of opportunity this year. We've been talking for years, for decades, that there are so many things in our reality that don't serve us, that we've been putting like band-aids on over and over again. And so, but we haven't done anything about changing them, or we'll change something little and be like, oh yeah, okay, well that was a little bit, but we need a lot more. And we just continue. So we sort of ripped the band-aid off on some things this year. And so it's interesting because we've gotten away from ourselves in terms of being not present. We've gotten away from ourselves in terms of not being connected with ourselves and with each other. We've gotten away from ourselves and not recognizing what is important versus what we are deem is important based on culture, by what everybody's going around. And it's almost like we got onto this snowball that was out of control. Good morning, Gloria. So this year has been a great stop of that. Like, it's been stop, step back, look around. And unfortunately, many have just fallen into the habit of that negativity of, oh, this is horrible, blah, blah, blah. But what I've said, and what many I know out here in the spiritual community has been talking about, is really being present with what opportunity this is providing us. So yes, a lot of people got laid off, lost their jobs this year. A lot of people had major shifts in their lives this year because of all the stuff that's been going on and that we have orchestrated here in the 3D. And so, but it's also given a lot of people, so it's very similar in many respects to what I had said back in like 2009 when we had the big um, recession, right? Hit us. And it's very similar because a lot of people got laid off, a lot of people lost their jobs. And then we had another mini one somewhere in the early 2010s. I can't remember what that was. But really, what that provided was this period of time that gave many the opportunity to really look at what they did for a living to say, is this truly what I would want to continue doing? Is this what makes me, get up in the morning? Is it, what helps me be inspired to get up in the morning, makes me happy to go through my day? And if that's not the answer to what you're doing, then it's something to reassess. And that has to do with our jobs, it has to do with our lives, it has to do with everything around us. And this year, because of what we've created in this um, idea of and the virus and whether, I'm being locked down. And, you know, there's so many different directions. So many have been talking about like conspiracy theory, which, in all honesty, and I've talked about this many times this year, is yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff to go with do with population control, but that's been going on forever. So it's really nothing new. But, so you could sit there and look into the conspiracy theory. You could put all this energy into all this stuff and then judge it and get like angry about it or upset. Or you can simply sit back and say, okay, so what do I do? What do I be in this situation? Right. And I've said this, like I had that come up a lot last year before all of this came down. I had all this conspiracy theory stuff come in front of me, all this really interest, and it was very engaging to the mind, very, very sexy to like go down that rabbit hole. And I finally stepped back and said, well, what's the purpose of this? And this was like this time last year. What's the purpose of all of this coming in front of me? Because, I do my best to not judge, to see things from the bigger picture. And the response that I got from my higher self was just be aware and know how to navigate and continue to navigate, beyond what's all the, craziness around, which was probably the best um, advice I could have gotten was from my higher self, which is usually the case. So then all this stuff hit, and so there's everybody's looking for where to take this energy, this frenetic energy that's coming up from under the surface, and what to put it on. Should we be angry at the government? Should we be angry at each other? Should we be angry at, you know, like, should we be angry at racism? Should we be angry at bigotry? Should we be angry at all this other stuff? And so it's like, but it's really not anger coming from any of that. It's really the anger coming from the anger that we have repressed for ourselves. Um, Disappointment and judgment and frustration and all that kind of stuff. When we project it out, it only comes from within us, and it has to do with what's inside. So what's been so important is becoming in touch with ourselves and to be really aware of that, to sit there and go, okay, so I want to take all this energy and judge my next door neighbor because they had a whole bunch of people over, and I want to tell somebody about that, and I want to complain about it on social media, and I want to call the cops, and I want to do all this stuff. And instead of doing that, is to step back and say, well, why am I so triggered by this? And it is a trigger. And if it is a trigger, it means that there's something inside. So, what is it that I believe about myself, or that I'm angry with about myself, or that I'm judging about myself? And a lot of people it has to do with doubting themselves and their choices. And like, there's so many things that are intertwined, right? So, like, there's the belief that you have to follow the herd. There's the belief, like the media says it must be true. If the politicians say it must be true. If the doctors say it must be true. And that we've given our power away so much to all that for so long that, even if the voice underneath is saying this is something that just doesn't jive with us, that we believe we're supposed to follow that herd, right? So then there's this friction that's already going on inside when that happens. And then we go, oh, yeah, well, if, like I feel that friction, but I don't want to look at it because then that would make me have to reassess all of this. So I would rather take that friction and project it onto my neighbor who, oh, well, how dare they not follow the rules, and how dare they not do this? Or let's judge people who have a different opinion than me, because then that makes me feel threatened that my opinion might be wrong. So, like, all of that stuff has come up. And so we've created so many ways to look at that this year. It's phenomenal because we are pulling stuff out of the cracks, we're pulling stuff out of the closet. We have pulled so much out, that we've hidden from ourselves and brought it to the surface. And the gift of that is to say, if I look at it and I can come to a place where I don't judge it anymore, where I look at it and say, okay, how does that serve me? How has that served me? What does that mean? How do I shift this, right? It becomes very much more productive. And then we can say, okay, well, now I can let that go. Thank you for being there. Instead of judging it and trying to stuff it down because we're ashamed of it or angry about it or whatever, we say, okay, well, thank you for showing this to me. Like, thank you to me, to my higher self, for bringing this into my reality to reflect back to me, to trigger me so badly that I have to look in the mirror and, and, and see you, to remind me that this is something I've been holding on to that doesn't serve me. Thank you for the lessons. Thank you for letting me complete this. And now I can let you go. And then there's so much freedom in that, right? So the downside of this is if you do not do that, which many are still not doing, this will continue to happen until it blows up to a place where you can't do anything but that anymore, right? It sort of strips away everything else. So, you know, many are looking to the end of the year as, like I was saying, like some magical, change in this energy. I think that it's fabulous that we've ripped off the band-aid this year. I feel like it has been a great leap forward for us. Now, even though everything sort of looks like it's a holy mess, but it's like we've been talking about. Many of us have been talking about. It's sort of like the tower card in the tarot deck, which is all about everything crumbling, so that it leaves room for fresh opportunity, for fresh growth, for fresh creation. And so the thing is, though, if we are continuing to hold on and with dear life to what's been not serving us, and we've been convincing ourselves through the ego that it did, relationships and jobs and living situations and environments and all that kind of stuff, is that we like, if we look at that, like, because we say, oh, I'm supposed to have this kind of job, I'm supposed to have this kind of paycheck, I'm supposed to have this kind of house and this kind of living situation, I'm supposed to be in this kind of, like, I'm supposed to have, the 2.5 kids in the white picket fence. And that shows everybody that I'm happy, which then must tell me that I must be happy or successful or whatever. And there's no one size fits all. And that's part of what this year has started to bring up for us, is we have to bring up all the stuff from the collective that's in the individual, and then sit there and shift our perception into a place of, I see this, I'm looking at it, I accept it, I'm learning from it, I have gratitude for it, and I can let it go. So that's our choice. It's our choice to be able to do that, and to say, okay, well, and there are things that we're owning up to within ourselves. Yes, it requires us to own up to some things within ourselves. And so we can just try to stuff it back down and ignore it, or we can continue to project it onto each other and others around us. We can say we're victims, which is what is one of the biggest excuses we give ourselves, right? So that we don't have to look at it. But if we shift our perspective to say there is no victimhood, I create my own reality. And if I create my own reality, having is evidence of wanting, meaning that what is in my reality is what I want to have in my reality, no matter how crappy it looks to the ego. And, some of the things that I've looked at this year within myself and at the collective level and in the work I've done with myself and others, it's been coming to that recognition of, we have loved suffering and victimhood as much as we love the ecstasy and joy of bliss and freedom, because it's that duality that we created to experience, and we wouldn't have understood the highs of the roller coaster if we hadn't gone to the lows. And so why do we judge the lows when we've created them just as much as the highs? It's all about the lesson, the reflection, the reminder, and to say, okay, I'm cool with this, and I see it, and I'm not going to judge it, and I'm going to, because sometimes when we do that, when we start to look at these things without judgment, then we can look beyond it, right? So even if you look at things like bigotry, right? That's come up a lot this year, racism and all that kind of stuff. If we look at that, right? If we look at I believe if we look at the idea of I'm better than blank, right? Is what we go through in our minds, even if we don't say it out loud. I'm better than blank. I'm better than a woman. I'm better than a man. I'm better than somebody who's this race or that race. I'm better than somebody who's LGBT. Like, this is all this, bigotry, right? And part of it has to do with, or I'm better because I'm this. I'm better because I'm LGBT. I'm a woman, I'm a man, or whatever. It's all this belief that we're unequal, right? That has to come from the ego. But then that's the ego's job has been to individualize and explore individualization and identity. And so now as we come back to remembrance, it's to say, okay, I see that. And when we get beneath this and we start looking at things from the higher picture, when we start looking at things from the perspective of I have been, in my experience as human, over the many lifetimes I've been here, I've been all of it. I've been man, I've been woman, I've been from all different places, all different races, all different beliefs, all different kinds of things. I have experienced this fully, and pretty much most of us who are here have too, in one way, shape. I've been the murderer, I've been the murdered, I've been the rapist and the raped. I've been all of it. That's like looking at our shadow side. That's looking at the separation that we've created, the darkness that comes from exclusion and separation. And that's what we have fallen in love with here. Like we love the villain, we love hating the villain and all that kind of stuff. And so we have all this inside of us, and we can put it out on a movie screen, we can put it on TV, and we can embrace that. But we have a really challenging time looking in the mirror and saying, yeah, that's me too. I'm Darth Vader just as much as I'm Luke Skywalker, kind of thing. Um, so when we can do that, right? And what's really funny is that some of us are more inclined to be okay with that than others. And we have such judgments. Some people say, "Oh, like there's somebody I know that I've worked with who was like all about being a good girl like their entire lives, and oh, I have to be good, and like blah blah blah, and I couldn't do this because I had to be I had to be the good one, and I can't believe somebody's mad at me because I've always been the good one." And I'm like, why do you put so much weight on people perceiving you as the good one? So you judge your shadow side that much, that you're repressing it that much, that you are actually denying half of who you are in identity because that's there. So a lot of this has come up this year. This is really important, and here's the thing. We can joke about it all we want. We can joke about the year going, crazy, that it's been an awful year, that it sucked and everything else. But there have been plenty of awesome things that have happened. There have been lots of shifts that have happened because it's almost like we've lost this a lot of distractions, right? So unfortunately, some of us have created new distractions with the distraction that cut out of the distractions, but it's also given us this space that we didn't have before. And some have been uncomfortable with the space, and said, "Oh, I don't know what to do," and blah blah blah. And it's like, well, look inside. What would you like to do? What There are many people I know who this year, because they've had more time on their hands based on staying home and staying close to home and having limited activities, that have explored parts of themselves in terms of like artistic endeavors on different things that they had not done before, that they would not have looked at otherwise because they're so busy, right? And we have glorified what busy is so much in this world, in this 3D world, that it's like a badge of honor to say how busy you are, right? And I've stopped saying that a long time ago. As I just say, well, it's been very full, right? Very full. Every day is very full. Um, and I've been striving to actually empty it out a bit, to give myself the space to say, how's it been? Very spacious. That It's funny, we judge that as, oh, well, so sorry that you're bored or that it's like, no, no, no. What if we give ourselves space? If we give ourselves that landscape to explore ourselves, to remember who we are, to take that breath and to quiet it all down, that is really where we start to blossom, really blossom into our true nature, our authentic self. And it could be something completely different than you have done in every other part of your life until today. And I talked to so many and worked with so many this year that have had so much stripped away from them, from the higher collective, because of all the stuff going on. And then this has caused this, and it's been like a domino, and oh, how awful, and I feel like a victim, and da, da, da. And then I'm like, well, but you created this so that you would be able to look at yourself without all of that distracting you. So it's a very different kind of perspective. I honestly believe it's fabulous. And the thing to look at is, don't be so quick to throw it away. Don't be so quick to say, oh well, 2020's gone, and put that, because that's actually, by the way, it's another claim to victimhood by saying, oh, it's the year, right? It's just a number. It's just a facet of measurement that we've created. And yes, because we all are looking at it this way, we do have a lot of collective energy to shifting the year. But like, how about we shift it in a way to keep the awareness, keep the space, and to keep the opportunities for allowing our, oh, excuse me, there was a big shift of energy, allowing ourselves to be truly who we came here to be, and to be able to transcend all the distractions of the ego chatter on the 3D, because there is a lot. I mean, there's a lot, right? You got all, and it's like, stop watching the media. This is what I talk to people about all the time. Stop watching the news. Just stop watching the news. I stopped watching the news years ago. And every once in a while, I'm guided to look at a news site or look for a certain story, or it'll come across my purview. But it truly is distracting. It pulls the collective into energies that are not serving to the individual. And it prevents us from sitting back and getting that insight within ourselves. We are going to have, my understanding is we're going to have a lot more coming. So moving forward, we have a lot of big change coming, and it's not what people think it is. We have a lot of big change that is right here in front of us. And so we can do it in a place of an open mind and fluidity and acceptance, or we can fight it every step of the way. And how easy or hard it is for each one of us really depends on how we react to it. It's not the situations, it's how we react to them. And when we're at a peace and centered within ourselves and are in a fluid, accepting, observant place, yes, of course we have moments where, I mean, I've had angry moments and sad moments and strange stuff, but all that is coming up, and we're clearing out so much history, which is great. We are flushing away stuff that we've held on to that has misidentified us, that has caused us to create identities that are built upon judgments and duality. And when we come or start stripping all that away, we're getting to this place of seeing the equal being of each one of us, the equal divine beings that we each are, so that we can then give ourselves, when we do that and when we honor ourselves as complete and as divine, we can do that with everyone around us to say, and you are too, and your expression of you. It's so freeing, because then you free up all this energy. You don't have to judge other people. You don't have to like get angry about what they're doing. You don't have to, point the arrow any place. You just sort of accept it for yourself and say, okay, all right, so what's next? What's next for me? And that's what I am suggesting. Maybe we take the energy of the shift of this calendar year, and to do is look inside and say, okay, so I'm going to focus all this time for thanks, for gratitude, for the amazing opportunities we provided ourselves at the collective level, and to be and for and now I'm going to set myself to be able to utilize this space, these opportunities, um, these these opportunities for me to be my true authentic self. And I'm going to, in that space, ask me to remember what's next for me. What is there for me to, and it's not to set a New Year's resolution for things to go back the way they were. There's no going back, right? It's setting the intention, the creation of, well, this is what my heart would sing with. This is what this is what it would look good for me. And it was funny as I had lunch with someone yesterday who is fabulous at manifesting. She's incredible at that. And she had created, like 5 years ago, had created the exact job she wanted to create. And she this year was like, yeah, it's time for me. I feel like it's time for me to go. And she had sort of made other plans that sort of fell through, not to go, but to do other things. And I was like, yeah, I think I have this money aside so that I can go and explore what's next. And it's funny because she just sort of walked right into it and major life change at the end of the year here. And she's really excited. And she's like, I have no idea what's next. And all I'm sitting, she goes, yeah, about like, August. I said, okay, so I'm leaving. I'm going to set my creation of I'm leaving my job. And she's single. She, so she owns her own life. Like we all own our own life, but she's single. Her kids are adults now, and she's like, okay, she's like, and a little bit, and her kids have been adults for a little while, so she's like, okay, you know what, whatever's next. So she left her job in September. She's like, yeah, she had money in the bank to float on for a while, and she's moving to another state. She goes, I set myself to leave my current job, to find the place for me to be, the next place for me to be, and to find another job that brings me even more abundance and prosperity than I've even had, with the one I'm leaving. So, and she goes, and so I've left the job. She goes, I've now found the place to be, which I'm going to be she's going to be in February. She's like, and now it's just for me to find this, I said, well, you don't find it. You just create it like you did with your last one. She's like, yeah, that's true. So the thing is, we can do that. And instead of it being scary, then it becomes exciting. It becomes an adventure, and all I keep on getting is, for me, is, well, take this moment, this breath of space, and enjoy it, because there is a grand adventure right around the corner. And of course there is. It's all a grand adventure, but we've cleared out a lot of stuff. So, like, what would be greatest for us to accept all it, to look at it, to thank it, and closing out the year, and to accept it for what it's been, to say what a fabulous opportunity to help us shift and move, the way we desire to move collectively, even if it doesn't look like it right now. And to say, okay, and I'm leaving myself open, and acceptance and self-love, to say, okay, what could be next? What is it for me to create that will just be my next grand adventure? So that's because we have a lot. And I do, without wanting to go into stuff that I've seen or others that I know have seen, we do have a lot coming up that's really going to continue to change and crumble. And it's there's no going back to the way it used to be. It's just moving forward in acceptance for what's present. And so when we can transcend that, and we can stay on cue, and we can look at all the stuff around us and say, okay, what is that showing me? What is there for me to do? What is there for me to be? Instead of what should I do? What should I be? That's a very different energy, because the should comes from the ego. So when we come to that, it's a much more centered, exciting place of possibility. Because here's the thing. Here's the other great thing that this year has provided us. It has forced us into a place of accepting massive change on a dime. So if we are doing that collectively, then we can do that to our advantage in the individual, right? So we can probably accept things now that the mind would have had a hard time accepting a year ago. Um, so for many, so it's like, okay, well, we're going to push it further. I know we're going to push it further. So, reach for the stars. Create your stardom. Create what is your heart's fulfillment. Create it. Allow yourself to be there. So, That's pretty much all I want to say. That's your home play. That's, like, do that for the new year, for the changeover of this, in this energy that we're creating collectively. Like, do that gratitude, let it go. If you want to put it all on a piece of paper and then burn it, some people like to do that as a ritual. Or you could burn it, like you could burn a candle with that intention to burn it away. You could do a whole bunch of different things. You can just meditate on it. You can just allow it to go. And then you can write down what you'd like to create. You could actually just give yourself the space to say, okay, I remember my bliss. I remember my wholeness. I remember my the fulfillment of my authentic self. And in remembering that, this is what I create. And see what comes up. Play with that. It's a great energy for that this year. Great energy. So, and then I'm going to let you go. Have a great one. Happy New Year. Happy new phase. We'll see you next time. This is Angela Coulter signing off with this week's Living the Shift.